Okay, so welcome everyone. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey building up to this retreat. I've really felt the energy growing for the last few days. Yeah, I feel the importance of this work that we're here to do together. This great work of liberation. And as we know, or as we'll come to know, this is a most important form of work because it's more of an undoing than a doing. This is a letting go of identification with the doer. That's really all this sadhana is. It's not something that's achieved, awakening, liberation. This is the paradox. It's not a goal that is achieved in the future. It's you could say a stripping away of illusion, revealing what is already here. So when you come to know that you are this awareness directly, we come to love that awareness. The little self learns to open, to love awareness more than the phenomena of the external world. So I see there's still people joining here. I'm going to go through the logistics here before we dive in. So we have about 250 people signed up, but I see we have about 130 here now, so that's actually fairly normal. We have a lot of people joining from different time zones and different places in the world, so there's going to be replays posted of all of the sessions. So I just want to mention, logistically, we have a whole team in place here to support you. Many of you have communicated with Lila already using contact@samadhi.ca. If you need to reach us for some reason, we have this chat open in Zoom right now. If you look on the chat button, you can chat with the facilitators. So you can chat with myself, Lila. I'm sometimes not available for a direct chat, especially if I'm doing a talk like this. But you can reach out to Lila or reach her at contact@samadhi.ca if there's any emergency, a spiritual crisis coming up. You need to get a hold of us. And by spiritual emergency, I mean, sometimes it's unlikely, it doesn't happen too often, but sometimes there can be a state of overwhelm. The nervous system, the psyche are sort of out of control. We've done a lot of screening in our intake process here, so it's unlikely, but feel free to reach out if anything like that is coming up. And the difference between a spiritual emergency, it's not the same as just the hindrances coming up in meditation. So don't overwhelm Lila with emails about how to move through the hindrances in meditation. We're going to be addressing all of that systematically through the teachings, and at the Q&A every day there'll be a chance to talk and check in with me. Anything that's coming up in your practice, you can address at that time. If there are logistical issues coming up, we have Tayama, our tech host here. So Tayama is available. You can message her through the Zoom chat here. She's one of the co-hosts. If there's issues with Zoom, you're not appearing in your camera, whatever it is, all of that stuff, you can connect with Tayama, or you can also email her at carla@live.ca. Yeah, so the rest of the team, we've got a team of facilitators here to help with facilitating the self-inquiry that will be happening in the evenings. We have other contributors. Chad will be here doing an amazing breathwork session later in the retreat. We have other people supporting, Jason supporting with yoga classes, Jerome supporting with yoga class, Alex tech support behind the scenes. So lots coming together to support this experience. And one thing I'd like to mention, so we've had a lot of communications going back and forth. There are people joining from all different time zones. We've done this retreat a few times now, and I really recommend that you shift your retreat schedule for this retreat. So if you can, try to show up for all of the sessions, and just shift the sleeping schedule if possible. It really works better that way. We've really found that when people try to stick to their time zone schedule, things get kind of mixed up. There really is a synergy that happens as we move through the retreat together. There's a power in the group energy. And I really recommend, if you've never done dyads before, please make sure you attend tonight's self-inquiry session. We're going to be really going through the practice. It's really important to get it properly. Some people have asked if they can connect with dyad partners in their own time zones. Generally we discourage that. Only if you are experienced and essentially if you've had an awakening or you've done an intensive, a facilitated intensive, and you really get the technique, then if you want to hook up with a partner in your time zone, only then, if both partners have done the retreat and really know the practice. Otherwise, things tend to almost always go off track. We really discourage doing unfacilitated self-inquiry sessions. Especially if you're new to dyads, you really need a facilitator present. So if you have done a retreat before and you're grounded in the practice, what we're going to do is leave the chat open. This will be the only time that the chat is open. Right after this talk, there's going to be about a half-hour period before the meditation session. And if you want to connect with someone in your time zone, you can do that. We'll make that possible. I'm sort of stepping back from any sort of recommendation of doing that. So we really prefer that you stay in the practice and in the retreat. And there's very good reasons for that, which will become more and more apparent as we go deeper in the retreat. And I'll explain more about that practice tonight at our first session. So logistically, we have Zoom translated captions that are available. We've turned those on. There are a few people who are joining, speaking different languages. They have better understanding with other languages. The translation works pretty well. It's better than most translation systems. It can be a little weird sometimes, but generally it's pretty good. So you can turn that on if you need that. As I mentioned, if you miss a talk or session, replays will be uploaded, and I'll be uploading things as quickly as possible. It's usually fairly quick after a session, usually within an hour, we can get the replays up. Logistically, there's in Zoom, if you're not that familiar with the interface, one of the things, there's a little view button in the top right. On most people's systems, it can be different if you're on an iPad or different things, but somewhere there's a view button, and so you can do speaker view when there's a talk happening, and I really like putting it onto gallery view when we're doing the sitting, the meditation sessions. It's nice to have a sense of meditating with the whole group. So I invite you to click onto the gallery view when we're doing the meditation. I think, I'm going to kind of dive in to how we can really make the most of these 7 days, how this is going to flow, and really, hopefully I'll address all of your questions. I see quite a few questions popping up in my feed here, so I'm just going to go through everything here, and hopefully that will address your questions. And it's important to address these questions as well. In the group process every day at 11 a.m., it's an opportunity to clear these questions from the mind, to clear any doubts, to address the hindrances as they come up in meditation. As we go deeper, the questions start to disappear entirely. As the mind starts to quiet, the mind starts to drop off. The preferences of the mind start to drop away. So, as Krishnamurti said, when there are no thoughts, there's no problem. But until then, we address the thoughts, we address the problems. So part of this is, we're really, we're entering into a don't know mind. This is really the most important preparation, or the most important sort of way of entering into the retreat. When the mind is a knowing mind, it's going for something, and whatever that mind is going for, it's something that has happened in the past, something that it knows, some past experience. I invite you to let go of past experiences, let go of what is known, and just let the mind be a don't know mind. So the mind, when we come to sadhana, the mind may have an idea of a goal, but whatever the mind thinks it is. Really, the goal is always in the future. But samadhi is now. Samadhi is when we become unfiltered from that mind. And this is what we speak of as direct experience, as the mind starts to drop. So, sadhana, right now I'm actually working on a film called Sadhana, and, what we're doing here, this sadhana really takes two different forms depending where you are on the path. There's really two fundamentally different types of sadhana depending on you and where you are on the path. So there's sadhana before awakening, and then there's sadhana after awakening. So before awakening, there's techniques. There's a doing with the mind. The mind is in motion, and there's the sense that we're doing a practice, that we're using a technique. So the initial phase of meditation and self-inquiry is, there's an initial, you could say, overcoming of the hindrances of the monkey mind. And with that, there may be experiences of various states, energies, all of that. So there's this sense of something that we're doing. But after an awakening, sadhana becomes something completely different. After you know the truth, once you've had that direct experience of your true nature, there's no more doing. We recognize that little self, that little doer, is not actually who we are. So sadhana simply becomes abiding as the self, as our true self. So, you could say at the beginning we start out in the mind. The mind is like this whirlpool of mind. It's in motion already. It's doing something, and most of its activity is unconscious. So there's this revealing of what the mind is already doing. And as we reveal what the mind is doing, we reveal what is in motion in the unconscious mind. We start to be able to let go of that doing, of that doer, that controller. So the practices that I'm going to start out with at this retreat, meditation techniques, these are all conditioned things that, we obviously learn them. The words coming out of my mouth, and then, minds are perceiving those words. They become part of the conditioning. So I like to say they're like a thorn to remove a thorn. We use these techniques at a certain point in the path, but we don't hold on to them. We're using these techniques to interrupt the habit pattern of you, of the little self. So once they've served their purpose, we let them go. If we just hold on to, the technique or this practice, any practice, anything that's learned in the mind, if we just hold on to it and keep doing it, repeating it, and think that it's this, there's something special about it, then it just becomes part of the self structure. It becomes part of the little conditioned I, and it just becomes another level of control. It's just another control mechanism. So we use the techniques as a stepping stone. We want to let go of them. If we don't let go, it's like Ramana Maharshi said, it's like making the thief the chief of police. It's like the thief is in control of the whole thing. If there's this doer, this controller, as they say, the mind, the conditioned mind, makes a good servant, but a poor master. So in this sadhana, you could say, the conditioned mind is learning its place. So in that respect, what I feel sadhana really is, I have a very broad view of sadhana. It's really whatever leads you to samadhi and awakening. So whatever it is, whatever stepping stones are required, to let go of that identification with the false I. So many different activities, many techniques can sort of interrupt that pattern of view. And the thing we have to watch for is that those activities can become new attachments. They can become appropriated by the mind. So for some people, a technique might be something new. It might be an interruption, a way to sort of see the habit pattern of the mind that is in play. But for other people, maybe you've been doing, a meditation technique for years, for decades. So, a technique that might be actually liberating for one person can be a prison for another person, if it's been appropriated by the egoic mind. So it's not so much about the technique, it's really who is doing the technique, is the technique leading in the direction of freedom, in the direction of less doing, less mind activity. There's a beautiful sort of teaching from Ramana Maharshi. He said something very poignant about sadhana. At one point in one of his teachings, someone asked him, about his sadhana, about what it is that led to his awakening, and he said something very poignant, and this is something very subtle, and I really want to get this across in this retreat. And this might seem a little bit difficult to comprehend right now, but I'm going to share it anyway, because this is, to me, the highest truth about sadhana. So at one point, Ramana said, I have never done any sadhana. I have never done any sadhana. And some of you will already know what is meant by this statement. So when Ramana says I, he's speaking about the self, the true self, which is just the pure awareness that is here now. So that awareness just is. The awareness doesn't do anything, it just is. When we awaken to that ineffable awareness. So awareness doesn't do sadhana. This whole game of liberation and bondage is all happening within the character, within the little self. So it's interesting, Ramana, of course, when you look at his life, it looks like his life is sadhana. He spent years, sitting in presence, in a temple. So the physical avatar, the character, was put in these conditions of no escape. So these conditions of no escape are really what we're putting in place when we're doing this sadhana. But this is for the self-structure. All of this is to clear this self-structure, to reveal this awareness that is ever present. This awareness doesn't need to be cultivated. It doesn't need anything. It just is. It just is. So it's like the sadhana, you could say, is like the unveiling or the clearing of the self-structure. So after, and there, many of you have, experienced this clearing, this awakening, recognizing of who you are. So we also, these same practices, these same self-inquiry techniques are also used to stabilize us in the awakened state or the open state. So clearing the mind. So for some of you, it may not be about finding out who you are. You may know already. You may have had a direct experience, kensho, samadhi, realizing who you are. But it's the same clearing process that we do to stabilize. Awakening is just the beginning. You can have an awakening, but it doesn't mean you're liberated by any means. Whatever samskaras, conditioning, is still running in the unconscious. These practices are useful tools for clearing the mind. So the awakening is, an important first step. There's this flip, this sense of I flips from the conditioned character, to the true I, to the selfless self, the ineffable. But it's just the beginning. There's a long path that unfolds after an awakening, where we clear the self-structure. Excuse me. Yeah, there's a long unfolding after awakening, where when that energy starts to really become free of the character, then this human vessel, this vessel that we're experiencing in this human experience starts to change and evolve. The inner lotus can really grow. The chakras, our whole human interface changes, and this vessel becomes something that can allow that awareness to shine through in a permanent way. And so that is liberation. So awakening is always available. It's always, waking up to that awareness that is here and now. But liberation is coming into a stabilizing and also, there are many possibilities of new things to emerge on our path. When the vessel is fully matured, when the energy is flowing from the root to the crown, it's possible for unfathomable new things to come forth. Sometimes, the awakening that can happen is, it's given many names. The Logos awakening in the human vessel. Christ consciousness, Ishvara. So these are, there's a development process, and the highest samadhi is when this awakened consciousness and the time-bound part of us become one. And this is the path. This is the work. So this vehicle. In Buddhism, they talk about the different vehicles. The self-structure, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes it's, in Kabbalah, they refer to it as the chariot. The whole self-structure. The Merkaba, the chariot. So we're when we free the inner energy, we start to connect with these other levels, these other sheaths of the soul, and of course all of these sheaths are Maya, but when they're hidden, when they're obscured, they're these are parts of the mind that are running in the background. We want to make all of it conscious. It's when we make all of it, the whole thing conscious, then we can become free. So, there's a phrase I use sometimes, always being Buddha, always becoming Buddha. And this is the paradox. I'm just going to mention one thing. So this is something that there's been some conversations on the community site prior to the retreat. This is one that I saw, and I'm just going to address it now because it seemed to have generated a lot of conversation, a lot of back and forth, and I didn't want to jump into that conversation there. But it's, the question that came up is, should I abstain from sex before and during the retreat? So the question, as with most questions that come up, the question is, who is asking that question? Who is the I that abstains from sex? So at this retreat, we're inquiring into our true nature, into pure awareness. So, it's always the character that's asking this question, so it seemed to me like, in this thread on the community site, it seemed like, the character is asking for permission in a sense, So, there's always two ways that the self-structure deals with everything, and it's the same with sexual desire or any desire. The conditioned self can either go with it, or it can sort of push it away and repress it, and neither option is, what we're doing here, Either option keeps you on the level of mind. So it's not about, indulging in any desire, and it's not about pushing it away. So, the third option is to find out who you are. So what we're doing at this retreat, we're turning attention consciously towards the self. So it's not about suppressing our urges. I encourage you, at this retreat, spend your time inquiring into who you are continuously, continuous practice, during every moment of the retreat. And then, just let go of anything that doesn't lead to progress. There are countless addictions, desires, cravings. So when we move out of the habit pattern of the mind, and for different people, that habit pattern, the little bosses, there are ones for some people that are really strong. For others, it's not as big of an issue. So it's different for everyone. You can identify what those are for you. But when we free the energy, energy is really part of this process. If the energy is going into those cravings, then it's not free for this exploration. When the energy really becomes free, with an increase in energy, we'll be talking about the jhanas, or the stages of meditative absorption. But when that energy becomes free, there's also a change in consciousness. The I am appears, vividly when that energy becomes free. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, these practices. There's this word that comes up in sadhana, that comes from the yogic tradition. The word is samyama. So it has to do with the 8 limbs of Patanjali's yoga system. So in the yogic tradition, samyama is really, it's the practice of the last 3 limbs of the 8 limbs of yoga. So it's dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So I tend to not get too caught up in yogic terminology. I like to kind of keep it more sectarian, or more or non-sectarian. More normal language. But I'm just going to address, I know there's a lot of people who have been involved with those traditions, and I think it can be helpful to bridge a little bit between the yogic system, between Buddhism, Taoism. They have different terminologies, but really it's all the same thing. It's all at the deepest level, really the same one practice. So these 3 aspects of samyama, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, it's really all meditation and self-inquiry. It's all one practice. And we're going to go into it. We're going to really see how that is as we move through this retreat. So dharana is the, it's the sort of active, single-pointed, intentional part of the practice. So, dharana is, if you think about meditation, it's the focusing on the meditation object, the active part of being here now, making an effort to be in the moment. And then dhyana, or jhana, is the non-doing part. It's the surrender. It's the, burning up of the samskaras, just burning in the now, opening, surrender, being with what is. So these two components are part of every meditation practice, part of every technique at the beginning. There's an element of doing and an element of surrender, attention and equanimity. If you do a Vipassana retreat, concentration, equanimity. These are the two aspects of all sadhana. And as we work, burning up the habit pattern of the mind, we come to the third part, which is samadhi. We come to this place where doing and non-doing sort of merge together. We can't even distinguish one from the other. There's this collapse of duality. So all of these, collectively, this is meditation, and the same thing happens in self-inquiry. There are generally these stages that we move through in meditation. We're using, at the beginning, when the monkey mind is strong, we use concentration, we use dharana to interrupt the mind-body pattern. This is where the hindrances arise, the tiredness sometimes comes, or busy mind, these samskaras, different pains in the body, craving and aversion, preferences, all of that arises at the beginning. We interrupt the pattern, and the pattern tries to re-establish itself. And as we move deeper into meditation, there's deeper surrender, just allowing what is, allowing everything to be exactly as it is. And in the practice, energy starts to become free, and we may experience bliss, we may experience energy. All sorts of phenomena may start to arise. And this second phase of practice is where, we experience sometimes things that are beautiful, so we can fall into the trap of seeking states in the second phase. So the next stage is really just noticing any preference for any state that we may be looking for, and just being okay with what is. And then as we move into the deeper stages of meditation, the mind clears. We're just in direct experience with what is arising. So at this point, the conditioned mind has given up doing something that we could call meditation. These preferences, this whole mind apparatus, we start to realize it to be empty of self. So there's this, an effortless effort. At the beginning, it seems like effort. To the little self, it seems like effort. There's this incredible effort of our entire being. It seems like, the mind will constantly try to continue its pattern. So there is an aspect of great effort, but the paradox is it's not an effort to do something. We're just being here, essentially. It's all it is. So we're learning to somehow practice effort and surrender at the same time. And as we move through the retreat, this can be applied in whatever it is we're doing. If we're doing the morning chanting, or we're doing asanas, stretching, there's an aspect of being present and an aspect of surrendering to what is. If we're doing the pranayama with Chad, and we'll speak about that later. And for those who have been following the teachings, the yogic teachings, like all of the initial limbs of yoga, we're sort of incorporating them in samyama when we do these practices. So, all of the, pranayama, being aware of the breath, pratyahara, turning away from the senses, it's sort of inherent within the practice that we're doing. The yamas and the niyamas, these different sort of ethical rules or things that are recommended to be done. When we're in a retreat, this is all we're doing. So the other limbs of yoga are really incorporated into what we're doing here. And there's many traditions that follow this perennial teaching, and they're all really, following the same, basic features. There's always concentration, equanimity, and then this ongoing kind of clearing of the unconscious. So concentration, equanimity, and sometimes, like Shinzen Young calls it, sensory clarity, descending into the somatic field, freeing of energy, whatever you want to call it. This is the part that is unfolding in the practice. So there are things that are known to us. These three levels. There are things that are known, things that are unknown, but which can be known. And then there's the unknowable, the unfathomable, the ineffable that is realized in samadhi. So I'm going to share this little quote with you, and then I'm just going to talk about one more thing after that. So this comes from the Upanishads. So it says, the eye cannot see it, the eye, the physical eye. The tongue cannot utter it. Mind cannot grasp it. There's no way to learn or teach it. It is different from the known and beyond the unknown. In this, all the ancient masters agree. So we're going to be pointing, what I'm going to be doing is pointing, beyond this limited mind, the mind that knows, the mind that grows into knowing, all of that, and all the whole field of changing phenomena. And what we can realize in this retreat, sometimes After a few days of doing this intensive sadhana, you may discover that it's possible that awareness remains. Even when you go to sleep at night, when the mind drops off, you may find that awareness remains. This is something unfathomable to the mind. In that primordial awareness, the mind can drop off, the conditioned self can drop off. But what is it that remains? This is sometimes called turiya. It's a byproduct or something that just happens when we really earnestly enter into a period of continuous inquiry, continuous practice. So when you reach turiya, as Ramana said, there's no more coming and going, for that time. Whatever it is, like an opening into the timeless. So I encourage you at this retreat, allow for something completely new. Enter into this continuous practice. Let the energy build. And when I say continuous practice, it's not the same as continually doing some technique. I don't mean continually doing some learned thing with the mind. It's just being with what is continuously, without the conditioning, without mediation of the little doer. So whatever you're doing for these 7 days, if you're sitting in meditation, just sit. If you're listening to a sound journey, just experience that. If you're walking, just walk. If you're eating, just eat. Have a complete experience of whatever it is, direct experience. Whatever is unfolding, if there's seeing happening, in the seeing, let there just be seeing. In the hearing, let there just be hearing. There doesn't need to be an I in it. No past, no preferences. It's just what's happening now, in this moment, directly. So I'm going to shortly go to a break. The last thing I'm going to talk about is I'm just going to mention, there are, as we move through this retreat, there's sort of a way of allowing the what's unfolding, to just be as it is. So not having preferences to anything that is arising within the self-structure. But when we start to do that, there can be an intensity that comes up. And I want to talk a little bit about productive pain versus unproductive pain. And this can be physical pain, or it can also be psychological pain. There can be times when we go into overwhelm. So productive pain is, really when we're doing meditation or we're doing the self-inquiry, there's that habit pattern of the mind of wanting to get rid of our pain. There's like sometimes body aches that they're only there when we're in the meditation practice. There's a squirminess that starts to come sometimes. We just want to get away from it. The little mind wants to get away. So that type of pain we want to actually just allow it to be as it is. We want the way out of that is the way in. We want to just let it be as it is. We want to burn up those samskaras. But we don't want to go into overwhelm, and there can be pain in the body, maybe from an old injury. Sometimes the body is sending us a signal, really saying, take care of me. There's something there that really needs to be addressed. So we want to distinguish between productive pain and unproductive pain. And the same, psychologically, there can be times where, the psyche can go into overwhelm as well. The nervous system can go into overwhelm, and it's not productive. If it feels like we're losing control, it's not a good feeling. Where it feels like there's something out of control, and it's overwhelmed, and it's usually pretty clear when this is starting to happen to most people. If it's happening, like we're sweating, the body is starting to shake, that type of thing, it can be a sign that we need to step back and just actually nurture the body. Sometimes they call it storming the gates of heaven. It's like we're determined to do something, but sometimes there's this middle way of moving through a retreat like this. We don't want to just blast through, brutalize the self structure, but at the same time, we don't want to baby the self structure. We don't want to seek comfort. So there's this sort of middle way of sort of dancing and flowing with the retreat. So I'm going to maybe end it there for now, and we'll take a little break, and I'm going to do a little bit of guiding in the meditation session, so that will be in a half-hour time, and then so for the first part there will be some guiding, and then we'll move into a silent period as well, and so we'll really tomorrow morning in the very first sit there will not be guiding either. So this is really, both of these sessions, it's an opportunity to really see what's coming up in the mind and body for you. Maybe there'll be hindrances, challenges coming up. And, the practice is really self-directed. These are 2-hour sessions. I'm not going to be ringing a bell until the end. It doesn't mean you have to power through the 2 hours. Usually at our in-person retreats, we do ring a bell every 40 minutes. But really here you're on your own. So it's up to you to take care of yourself. And of course, the invitation is to just sit, to just really explore what is coming up within the mind and body. But if you need to stretch, take a little break, washroom break during those 2 hours, that it's entirely self-directed in that way. So everyone can use their own discernment to move through those 2 hours. And again, it's about the middle way, moving beyond our comfort zone, but not so far beyond that we go into overwhelm. Yeah. So thank you, and we'll see you in a half hour's time.